So continuing on with our blues, we had some of these placed in, and I wanted to show you something that I was aware was going to happen when I chose the particular blue-green type of green that blue that I chose for this area, and the palette that we have. And you might run into this in your painting in different ways. But the cerulean blue is our lighter, warmer blue. And so that's the blue that you would think, well, that's going to contrast the ultramarine blue, the cooler blue. And so I'll dip into that and start mixing some blue that will be suitable for that area. And so when you do that, you might start to find that you are running into some problems. So here's my cerulean blue, and if I just kind of plunk that down right here, you see that yes, definitely it is lighter and a little warmer and pops in a different way than this blue does. But I need to warm it up further and lighten it more and bring some of that brilliance into it as well. And so when I do that, I might add some white. This already has some white, and kind of check out what white does. And yes, that brings it into, you know, a lighter family. But it still needs to be slightly toward the warmer and even greener side of things. And so to do that, you might move toward your very yellowest orange, and I mixed up some even more yellow orange than what I had, and I mixed that in here to get sort of a greener hue and warmer, and put that down here, and that starts to feel a little better to me, right? And that absolutely, in this limited palette situation, is the only answer, the only recourse that I have is going with this blue-green. When I am looking at the object in the intense light that it has, I really am noticing, though, that it has more intensity. And you might be seeing that in other things that you're looking at. You're like, how do I get it? How do I get it to look as intense as that? And sometimes the answer is you can't with the pigments that you have. In this particular case, I happen to have Viridian green, but that's not what the palette suggests, right? We're asking for blue and orange, not green and orange. And Viridian is a special kind of green that is a very blue-green, and it also has a pigment structure that brings that very vibrant, very poppy kind of color. So here's a Viridian, and you can see when I add yellow to it and white to it, how it becomes a bit more in the family that I really want to use. I'm going to ignore that for a little bit, but I want you to know that I would like you to do the whole painting not using any other color, you know, and you would take a picture of it, just because it's about seeing the difference of color, not necessarily just getting the right color, and making this color feel like the color that you're seeing rather than necessarily mimicking it exactly. If you're all done and you've taken a picture of it and you want to go back, or if I want to go back and just get that little pop of color and say, yeah, I cheated and I used Viridian green, but I know it's sort of a blue and blah, 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 of course. And if it's your painting, you're going to push it to where you want it to be. And if you love that part of the still life, then you're going to want to put it in there. But do try and struggle along with the restraints of the limited palette for as long as you can. So I just wanted to point that out to you. Sometimes it's a kind of a, you know, fluorescent type color that you're working with, and you're like, I cannot get it. And that is why. It's because you can't get it. And that's all right. So I'm going to deal with using my cerulean and my yellow orange to bring a quality of what I'm seeing to my painting. And soon your eye starts to adjust to that and you're off to the races again. It's also very interesting to see how little shifts can make a difference, how one thing next to another makes one color look different than another. So all those things. As you're going along, if you find like, oh wait, this isn't fitting the way that I need it to, you can either adjust it however you want, or you can, obviously, you can go back in and get your, orange going. And this is, again, the reason we like to mix up the full palette so that you have everything just accessible for the most part, and ready to kind of paint two things at one time. It took me a long time to learn all this stuff, by the way. Nobody ever taught me. I just kind of, people taught me other things, but not that. And so I pass it along to you. Try and keep a bunch of brushes going, keep a bunch of paint wet, and paint a couple of things at one time. I grabbed kind of a small brush for this, and it's a softer brush, so I'm again noticing the difference with it. Things I like about it, things that are frustrating about it. It's a little bit floppy for this subject. There are all kinds of variations in this, and you can go into as many of them as you see, but knowing, your basic timing and what the complexity of your still life is, do try and keep the shapes general and don't get too in depth until you've gotten kind of around the painting a first pass. Okay, so anyway, that's that blue-green, and I could keep fussing with it and need to definitely let go of my desire to get that Viridian going in there. All right, moving along, we're going to start looking at some of the neutrals that we see, meaning the whites, the blacks, the shadows, and how they interact. So we started looking at this rock color and this rock color and how they sort of were mistakenly made by mixing ultramarine blue and the alizarin crimson and yellow, and that kind of started us off on this greenish path, so we might follow along with that. These happen to be made with those same colors down here, these neutrals, and this one's the redder version of it, and this is the more neutral version of it. And these also seem, in the bluer range, to be a nice fit for some of the shadow colors on the black. They have a sort of bluish This has a bluish black to it. So I might just start simply by reestablishing some of those darker shadows and noticing again how nice it is to work on top of a toned surface so that those darks go on pretty easily. I do see a lot of variation in the shadows where color is reflecting, and I'm noticing that, and I will go back to that when I get the basic shadows in. Again, I'm not a big fan of like, everything's black, let me make it black, when I don't really see this color black where the light hits it. I will just try and find that color by mixing that color, and then I won't be painting it twice or 3 times because I've already put my tone down showing me the value of it, and I know I might change my mind about the color a few times, so why paint it darker than it needs to be, right? I know these shadow shapes have 2 chances, or as many chances as I want, but I get to form that again by the lighter tone next to it, so I'm not too worried about seeing it the first time exactly right. And I'm seeing this kind of reflective stuff going on in there. Let's get back to that. Okay. So that's sort of where I'm seeing that darkest dark. I might start to lighten it a little bit with the mixture that was between these 2 and white from earlier when I was mixing these colors, and start to see how that works as a secondary shadow color. It's still pretty dark compared to what I see, but maybe it will work as these shadows I saw as a little lighter to begin with, a little bluer. So I might put those in. And then I might go even lighter here. Maybe even add a little bit of the white with the blue in it. And I see even a little bit of cast cerulean blue on here. So I'm going to put that in. And over here I see it a little bit warmer, so I'm bringing in the warmer of the tones. And I'm getting a little scratchy because I see that there's not quite enough paint, so I'm going to kind of get a little daring and mix more. Again, I know I'm dealing with this color here and ultramarine blue and white. So that's the family of color that I'm mixing in. I did add a little cerulean over to the left to make it a little warmer, but I can kind of come in and find these lighter parts and warmer parts that I'm seeing. So these are neutrals mixed with complementaries, and then mixed again and kind of shifted, and that's how we get some interesting color and how we learn about making color theory work when we're observing color from life. And do notice how it dries a little darker here and there. And just notice it and then adjust for it if you can. I'm going over this to warm this area up a bit. And I'm kind of noticing some things in here that I can't see very well because they're in shadow, but I know there are variations in there. So I might go ahead and mix up a little bit more of the dark shadow color. And again, working wet into wet paint, you can kind of get a softer tone to tone. These are also tones that are pretty close in value. And if you need to make changes as you're going like I am, kind of noticing, oh, that's actually not so far up there. That is fine. Because once you've kind of got the tones set up and you kind of know the basic palette you're dealing in, you can make a lot of changes, and a lot of those changes will just happen naturally if you're following along. And I'm actually having a little trouble with glare right now, so I'm not seeing what I'm painting as clearly as I would like. But that's all right. And I keep seeing this tone kind of vacillating between the bluer and the oranger sort of neutral. And so I let myself vacillate between them and kind of put them on there and see how that goes. All right. So I could keep working in here a lot. There's a lot of interest in this area for me. But one thing I'd like to do is just kind of continue plunking in some of these neutrals before I get carried away. I'm bringing in this kind of cerulean white mixture from up here, and because I see it here in the background, and you see how that works as a different kind of gray that I'm plunking in back here, and I see a bit of it in here too. And see, maybe a little bit of it up here, maybe some over here too. Okay. And then I see it starting to head toward a sort of orangey thing. And I'm going to cool that off with some white. And I might bring a more reddish orange into it because I see it going a bit green and I want to neutralize that. And so this is sort of this warmer neutral that I see coming behind here. maybe even a little more that reddish quality. You'll notice I'm still using a pretty big brush, and I'm glad for it because I can move the paint around a little more broadly. So you just see I'm just continuing to modify those neutrals as I move around the painting, and I'm not afraid to change what I am seeing differently now for whatever reason, even if my perspective kind of changed or I'm standing in a different place. Paint is very forgiving that way, especially acrylic. Doing these demos absolutely helps me to appreciate how much time you will be spending on each project, and to monitor that. And so if I'm leaving things general, that's because I'm also trying to respect how much time I want you to spend on these and how much time I don't want you to spend on them. I want you to spend good time on it, and that's how you learn how to paint, but I also want to respect that unfortunately painting's not the only thing in your life right now. Or fortunately, in case you're finding it miserable, which I hope you're not. So some of these neutrals, right? And then we're moving up through here a bit. And it gets kind of yellowy as we go over here. Maybe we want to see how it would affect that. So it needs to be a bit darker, a bit bluer, but maybe a little greener. Again, you're thinking about the direction in which you're moving the brush. And in my still life, I seem to be using a lot of this particular mixture. You'll probably find that one works well for you too, but do branch out and do make sure that you're utilizing all of them, because you'll find sometimes you're just using it and you're not really, it's not working everywhere, but you're just like, that's my dark, I'm using it. But that's not always going to get you the best color. So do branch out of that and away from that if you find that you're relying on one neutral mixture or one complementary mixture to get you there. Okay. I'm giving you two blues so that you really utilize those two blues. I'm starting to use my brush in a lot of different colors and allowing a little bit of that intermixing to happen that I don't like to happen early on, because I'm starting to feel more comfortable that I've established a family of color that's going to work together better. And so just to notice that's what I'm doing. It's always good to have a little break to stand back and kind of think about what the next step is. I would want to come in and start with these reds pretty quickly. And see if I've got some red that I can do that with. I think I can use this, but I'm gonna not be lazy and I'm gonna put out a little more cadmium red. And pull in that darker but still saturated version. Desaturating a little bit more where I want it to be deeper. You'll start to notice why it's not really worth getting too picky about the way that you find your drawing, because you're going to see it differently and you'll have so many opportunities to change it with this paint if you're really utilizing the paint properly or to its full capacity of adaptation. Okay, so I would keep probably finding more of this blue and this intersection interesting to follow along. I might want to make some more subtle transitions here, but we're at a stage right now where most of the white and the underpainting is completely covered. We've got a sort of an idea about what we think the translation of those colors we're seeing are with the blue and orange palette. And we've discovered how to make orange look red and orange look orange and desaturated. You know, a word about highlights too. You try and think about highlights as color. So, you know, I'm seeing some highlights in the fruit, and I want to first try it with the highlight that comes from the color that it is. And then when you see coolness, you know, go toward white, or you might even bring a little bit of that bluish, whatever you're seeing next to it, so it can optically mix. Save those highlights to the end because they're fun, and also they won't give you a false sense that you understand the form before you do. So that's my word on highlights. And you know, these reddish highlights, I probably wouldn't go toward the red with those. I'd probably go toward the blue pretty quickly because that's the way that I'm seeing them. And you know, go for the shape of that and see how, you know, pure blue and white responds, which is pretty well. You know, you can mess with it. You'll start to see things differently the more you mess with it. And remember, it's just paint. You'll go back over it whenever you want to. And, you know, have fun. So I could keep painting for a really long time, although I am losing my light and I'm again losing my battery. So I'm probably going to end recording, which you can clap now for it being over. And I just can't wait to see what you guys do. And I know it'll be different, and that is good. All right, we'll talk to you soon.